Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Eat Me and Question Everything with Devin and Courtney. Today we have Natalie on, the Bikini Pro. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and just give us the rundown, the whole 9 yards?
Sure thing, sure thing. Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank
It's
you.
amazing to connect with other women in this space. Wow. Okay, so let's see. The Cliff's Notes version is because it's been quite a journey. I've been on this health and fitness and transformation journey for over 10 years now. It was 2011 when it all started for me. I got out of a bad relationship, toxic relationship. Um, Eventually, a book will come out under the name Breakups Make Bodybuilders, and it'll be the first half of my story. Because the healing for me all happened during that time. It was all about an emotional, spiritual, mental healing that led to the physical healing. So it was really just trying to heal my heart that then got me into this wanting to improve my life in a 360 degree. So I started looking at all the things. How could I improve in every area? I was a dancer. I grew up a dancer. I went to college for dance. I taught dance after college. I never went to conservatory. I never performed professionally, but it was always my passion. But I stopped dancing. I got into arts administration. I was in nonprofit management for 15 years and I stopped dancing. So for many of us, becoming adults and getting into the working world and not being as active as we were when were younger, we're not as healthy as we were when we were younger. Same with getting into a relationship or getting married. We put on that weight. We're eating and we're happy and we're, over consuming and all of those things. So that was my life. I was in my mid 20s. I was in this toxic relationship. I was not taking care of myself in terms of what I was eating and how I was feeding myself, and overstressed and overworked and all the things. By the time I was 25, I had stomach ulcers, I had chronic migraines, I had GERD, I had all kinds of what is it, PMDD, basically like the premenstrual, just terrible premenstrual syndrome. I had dealt with that from the time I got my period when I was 11 years old. So for 20 years, I was on the pill, on every different pill you can imagine. Terrible, terrible side effects, terrible pain with my periods for years. So all of these things, gut health was a wreck, just totally a mess. My digestion was a mess. I was on antidepressants for GI symptoms because they give antidepressants for everything else and everything else that you can think of. So basically, I was just a mess at 25 years old. You shouldn't find yourself in that situation so young. So it was getting out of the relationship that led me down the path of healing internally, looking at myself, spending time with myself again. I was dating myself and doing all this self-care, and just getting in touch with, trying to heal. And so then I started caring more about what I put in my body. I had a spiritual awakening, went on a retreat, went back to the church, got into my faith. And that's when I started looking at my body as a temple and thinking about, well, I don't want to put garbage in my temple. And so it was a small thing that led to another thing and then led me down the path. So it started with Lent in
I'm Catholic, so I get that. Yeah.
2011. And you know what? I was the person who could never stick to a diet. So, like most women, grew up on diets, my mother going on diets, always on a diet, but I could never stick to it. So, the only thing that ever allowed me to stick to a diet was if it was something I gave up for Lent. Because then it was a spiritual reason and then it was like a sacrifice. So then there was a deeper reason why I wasn't eating the thing. So I gave up dairy. That was the first thing that went. And of course, with the dairy was coffee because I couldn't drink my coffee without creamer and sugar. And So just taking the dairy out, people started complimenting me. What are you doing? You look great. My skin improved. I lost weight. It was just like I wasn't even trying to. It was just taking the dairy out. Of course, after that, I put it back in. But then I started experimenting with other things. And the following Lent, I said, okay, well, I'm going to do it again. But this time I'm going to read labels. And anything that's made with dairy, I'm going to take out. So now all the bread came out. It was mainly all of the bread and the pastries and the desserts. And I was the kind of person, grew up Italian and Greek. I loved any creamy dessert thing. So all of the, pretty much that eliminated most sweets from my diet. Um, and then that kind of snowballed. I'll never forget, I went to dinner. It was a hibachi restaurant for a friend's birthday. And I said, can I just have the meat and vegetables, without the rice and without the soy sauce? And my friend said, oh, are you paleo? And I was like, well, what's paleo? I'd never heard of it. So I went to Google. I found out what paleo was, and this piqued my interest. And it was very similar to pretty much, I started just eliminating things because it was all about, I'm feeling better without the dairy. And now I'm feeling better taking the bread out. And, okay, what if I take this out? What if I take that out? So I just kind of started experimenting and landed on paleo. And I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to try this paleo thing like 100%, like the way that they say to do it. This was the early days of paleo. So there wasn't like as many different definitions of it at the time. It was pretty clear. It was like Rob Wolf and the original websites about paleo. So the biggest thing for me at that point was I had to take out my hummus. And I was a Greek girl that was living on hummus. So really though, what that did, and at this point I had gotten back in the dance studio and I was trying to kind of find myself again. And so I was getting fit, and I had joined a pole dance fitness community studio, and I started building upper body strength, and I started building core strength. And like, even as a dancer, I never had the upper body and the core strength. It was always all lower body. So this was like a challenge, and it was fun. And I had this female community. And it was like about exploring my sexuality again and like feeling good in my skin. And now with paleo, I was embracing protein because until then it was like salads and hummus, and I just really wasn't doing a lot of protein. So I started eating eggs for breakfast. I started increasing my protein. All of a sudden I started building muscle, and I saw my body change. And then I did my first Whole30 that year. It was like I had heard about that, and I was like, oh, I can never do that. Like, you have to give up everything sweet? What? Like, no way, that's not for me. But granted, by the end of it, this is now October 2013, I was like, you know what? I'm doing my first Whole30. And the coolest thing about that was that that's where the mindset and the habit change started happening, because Whole30 was more about your relationship with food and not recreating. Because at that point in my paleo journey, I'd started recreating standard American diet desserts and, making these paleo desserts and all the things with dates and almond flour and all the stuff, right? So Whole30, oh my gosh, I got my first six pack. Never in a million years did I ever think I could be a person with a six pack. And people started planting seeds, asking me, oh, do you compete? Or, are you an athlete? And I was like, well, I do, I perform in pole dancing. We did these little exhibitions at the end of our 10-week class for our family and friends. I was like, but that's the extent of, what I do. And I'd forgotten all about this, but I was like, oh, what are they talking about? I started looking into it. And I remembered, I'll never forget, like 12 years old, I used to watch the ESPN Miss Fitness Universe pageants. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay, now I remember I wanted to be Miss Fitness one day. And at this point, bikini competitions were becoming more popular, bikini bodybuilding. Whereas, 20 years ago, before that, they really didn't exist. The bikini division didn't exist. It was always like bodybuilding. And that is really difficult to get to for women. especially naturally. But now it's like I started finding, oh, I found influencers, who competed, and I was like, oh, well, I broke my thumb teaching class one night. I had to leave the studio. I couldn't do it anymore, and I was losing strength. And I have a history of disordered eating. So in my teens, I was bulimic up through junior year of college, and then had basically like an 18-year recovery until 2020. And that was like a whole nother side of my journey, was when the pandemic hit. I was prepping for a show, and I was on again, off again prep all year. And I ended up in a deep depression and full blown bulimia again after 18, 19 years. So once again, never thought I could ever be back there. But I say all that to say, when I got out of the pole studio and I had my broken thumb, and I had been so gung ho about the paleo lifestyle, like a little holier than thou. I was kind of like that person you didn't want to be around at dinner because I was going to talk about what was on your plate. Isn't it kind of funny how life humbles us? I found myself on the other side of a package of Oreos, and it was like, whoa, wake up call, like binge city. And I was like, okay. I started putting weight on, and it was like, I'm not working out like I used to, and I don't like the way I feel in my body now. I need something to get me back on track. And so I was like, you know what? They were talking about competing. I'm going to sign up for my first show. So this was 2015. I decided to start competing, start getting into the competitive bodybuilding world. And I totally thought like, oh, I'm just going to sign up for a show, and I'm going to do a prep. And this is what everybody thinks. Like, I'm going to do a prep, and I'm going to lose the weight, and I'm going to get on stage. Well, it's not that simple. It takes time. You've got to build the muscle. You've got to get to the right body composition. So it wasn't for another year that I actually got on stage, but 2016 was my first show. I caught the bug. The dancer in me absolutely loved the performance aspect of it, getting on stage. And this was the new thing. It was like, okay, now instead of going to the dance studio, I'm going to the gym. And at first it was really fully about the aesthetics. I just wanted to get the weight off and feel good in my body again. But it also kind of made me clean up my diet. Can you prep for a show and still eat junk and do IIFYM if it fits your macros? Sure. But I had already found like this whole foods way of eating. So for me, it was like putting a show on the calendar is just going to be the carrot that keeps me motivated to actually get back to what aligns with me. And that is real food, animal-based nutrition. So that was still, that was all paleo. When I decided to compete, I went to Paleo FX that year in Austin, Texas, and I cornered Menno Henselmans, who is not only a pro bodybuilder, but he's a statistician, and he owns this company that does all of this research on fitness and nutrition, and he's pretty big in the low carb space. And I cornered him after his talk, and I said, hey, I want to compete, but my coach has me on this 40-40-30, I think it was, macro split. And it was, 40 protein, 40 carbs, and then 30 fat. And even that, because I had embraced a higher fat lifestyle, like I was just like, I'm not enjoying this. My body doesn't feel good. And this is only a few weeks in. And all I was eating was sweet potatoes, because I'm like, well, I don't eat grains. So where else am I going to get my carbs from? So I was like, this is not enjoyable. And he was like, well, you should look into keto. And I had a friend who had already lost 80 pounds on keto. And I was like, you know what? I called her up and I was like, Sharonda, I'm going keto. And that was the entry into keto for me that year. And then every year for my preps, I would always, in the off season, I would go back to a more paleo template. I'd add more carbs back in, but then inevitably that would lead to junk. It was like, okay, at first it would start out with putting in some hemp seeds and putting in some chia and all the, all those things. and then it would be like, oh, blueberries, and then it would be like dark chocolate, and then it would be like the nuts, and then next thing you know, I'm finding myself on the other end of a sugar binge. And every single time it would be like this. And then I'd be binging, and then I'd have to get over the binging. I've worked with binge coaches, I've worked with disordered eating, with therapists, naturopaths, all of the things. And it's like this cycle. And then it wasn't until I found myself in rock bottom in 2020 and binging and purging every day for 6 months, where it's kind of, I've heard this term, sometimes you have to get to your lowest before you can, rise above. And that's exactly what it was like. Humility city. It was like life hit me, smacked me upside the head, and it's that moment of, I thought I was past this. I thought like I had it all figured out. And at this point, I'm a certified coach. Like, I have all these credentials. I'm working with people. I'm helping other people get to their goals. And then I'm secretly having this life of my own that is completely counter to everything that I'm saying. And now I feel like a fraud. And now I feel like failure. And that just kept me in shame. So it was telling one person, telling another person, and then going public with it, and then committing to my recovery. So then I got a new naturopath, I got a new therapist, I did the whole thing all over again. And that is what led me into the carnivore lifestyle.
Yeah, I did. I've been watching your YouTube videos, and I know that 2020, even though it was hard for all of us, I know it was really disappointing for you because you had just gotten your pro card, right?
Yeah.
And so you were going to go do your first like pro show. And like, I have a couple female bodybuilders that I follow because their bodies, like, oh my God, you know what I mean? And I know the amount of work and how hard it is. So everything, for everyone who doesn't know, basically you were about to have a pro show right when COVID hit.
Yeah,
and it was
3 weeks out.
Yeah, and it was your first pro level.
Yes. Yeah. And here I was coming off my most successful prep ever, my most successful year ever. Actually, it was February that I put in my notice at my full-time job and went full-time into coaching. And it was like my entire world changed. I had moved into the city just a few months earlier. So I was living alone in a 1-bedroom apartment in the city. I didn't know any of my neighbors. And I was single. So there was literally no one in my life, no one around me. And it was fine because I was in this prep, and it was like, I need to have the blinders on. And I was 3 weeks out. I was in my best shape ever. I had just come off of this wildly successful year going pro. And I was getting ready to do photo shoots and submit myself to all these publications. I had this whole vision in my head of like all my dreams coming true in fitness, and this new career and all of that. And then it was like, boom, everything shut down, show gets canceled. Did I even have any clients then? I don't even think I had a paying client at that time. It was like, all of a sudden it was like, oh shit, like, how am I going to pay my bills? Like, literally everything all at the same time was just like taken away. Yeah.
Okay. So during this time, you're struggling with your relationship with food. You're binging, you're purging, correct? Okay.
Yep. It was probably all good until about April, which was like when I got my last paycheck. And it was like, and then it was like the shit hit the fan. It was like, oh my God, overwhelmed.
That would be like insanely disappointing. That would put anyone into a spiral. I feel like you're doing all this prep work and then the rug literally just gets pulled out from under you. Like
all the time, like
horrible.
On that, like prepping to just be like, there's for what, what point during that, like that time frame were you like, I need to go, I know sometimes you call it ketovore. I call it ketovore, carnivore, whatever, where you like, I think I just need to have like a meat-based diet.
Yeah. So actually the show where I got my pro card, that's where I had my first true carnivore experience. That peak week, because for competitors, peak week is the week where you dial everything in. Like you take out all your powder supplements, you take out anything that could do anything unexpected to your body, because you have to dial it in so closely that you know exactly how your body is going to come in when it's time to hit that stage. So you are looking at every few hours after a meal, what do I look like? You're taking pictures, you're looking in the mirror, you're checking every few hours so you can dial it in on show day perfectly. That's what we call peaking. So for my pro show, and my first couple shows I did without a coach. And I had done a natural federation, drug tested federation my first time. I did an NPC show my second time, both without a coach, just trying to figure things out on my own. And I had done some things a little too extreme. I did a PSMF, protein sparing modified fast, both times because I was petrified I wasn't going to come in on time. And my digestion was totally shot after that. Like my bowel movements, everything was, because all I was eating was protein and nothing else. And it was miserable. So I was like, okay, I'm definitely not doing that again. This time I had a really great coach in my corner who was telling me everything to do, making sure my fats didn't get too low. He wouldn't even let me go under 60 grams. He was like, nope, this is like the floor for you. We're not going any lower than this. And this is what you need, because your mind plays tricks on you when you're getting to that low level of body fat. You're just not in an optimal position. And let me just say this, competing is not healthy. It is the other side of that coin. Like when we're losing weight on our weight loss journey or fat loss journey, to a point we're gaining health. And then once we get to a healthy, lean place, if we keep going, we are now detracting from our health. And that is what competitors do. So I don't want to glorify this sport and say, you know, this is something everybody should do, or it is absolutely not. It is something I'm getting ready. I had a couple of ladies in my community recently ask for me to do a video on who should compete, who shouldn't compete. How do you know if competing is for you or not? Because I know a lot of women have considered this. So that's coming this week. I've promised it on my YouTube, so that'll come.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I like to always caution about that, because it can be, I mean, your mindset, your emotions, your hormones, everything gets thrown out of whack when you're that low. So for my pro show, or the show where I got my pro card, my coach, we decided, you know what, take out all the veggies, because like my body wasn't handling them well. So those few days leading up to the show, I was eating a ribeye for dinner, like doing an OMAD, I still had my coffee. I've never given up my coffee on Carnivore. So I'll go ahead and make that disclaimer.
Neither have we. So.
I'm Carnivore plus coffee. Yeah. So I would do my coffee in the morning. I would do my water and electrolytes. I would do my ribeye dinner, maybe twice, 2 meals a day, like a small meal earlier in the day, and then my ribeye. And it was like, I felt amazing. I got to the leanest I'd ever been, best shape of my life, coasted into that show. No problems. I fasted on show day. It was literally just my coffee with my MCT, my water with my electrolytes, got on stage, got off stage, made it till about 11 o'clock at night by the time we got to where we were going to eat dinner after the show, and finally got seated. And I was just like, I don't even care to eat. Just give me water. I just want my water. And then like, by the time we finally sat down and ate, it was just like, and it was a Spanish tapas place. So I was just like octopus and like all of the meats and the seafood that I could get. It was amazing. So I was like, you know, it worked so well for peak week. I used it again in 2020. So really what pulled me out, or what I used to pull myself out of the bulimia, was another show. Usually I wouldn't recommend this, but I was just like, I know myself, and I know as an athlete that when I commit to something and I put the money down, like I put in the registration fees and I pay for the photo shoots, like I'm not going to screw up. So I knew that I would go 100% all in if I committed to a show. So 2020, I competed in Miami in Thanksgiving weekend. And it was literally like a few weeks out that I just said, you know what, we're going all in. I was pretty much ketovore at that point. It was like meats and eggs and like some green onions, like little bits of veggies here and there for flavor, but mainly meats. Cause I knew at the end of the day, like this is what makes my body feel best. I feel, I don't feel any bloat. I'm not dealing with any indigestion. I don't have none of the symptoms. That the inflammation just completely leaves my body. And for anyone who's dealt with disordered eating, the biggest issue, especially for bulimics, is the inflammation. It is just, you're just causing your body nothing but this fluid balance is out of whack every day with binging and purging. So I really needed to calm the inflammation in my body. And so that's what I did. I just did that. I did a lot of self-care. I went for lymphatic draining massage and red light and saunas and all of that. And then just drank a lot of electrolyte water and did my meets. And I felt incredible. I'll never forget going to that show. I got to Miami a few days early. I was there with my sister. And I remember just telling her, like, I'm petrified of after this show because I feel so good right now. And I don't want to lose this. And she said, well, you don't have to. And it was like this little seed planted, like, we put so much on, like, if you follow other bodybuilders, they just praise junk food. Like, it is just, they praise sweets, they praise this post-show meal, this
the Rice Krispies.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And then the post-show cheat meal or whatever.
They always show like eating a donut or a piece of cake, like as they're in their bikinis. Yeah.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's terrible. So I had already had all this in my head about, oh, what the post-show meal is going to be like. And here I was, like, pouring my heart out, like, I feel amazing right now and I don't want to lose this. And I've been on that so many times, and I fell into it again after that show. It was like, well, I already listed out all these foods I couldn't wait to eat again. And then it was like, yeah, I did that for a week and felt like garbage again. So after that, I moved home with my family. I knew I needed the support. That's when I got all of the medical support, the therapy, all of that. And that year is the year, Courtney, where, like you, I started listening to all of this mainstream advice about anti-diet culture and the traditional paradigm of disordered eating recovery says nothing's off limits. You have to allow yourself everything, the all-in mentality. And going all in did nothing but put an extra 30 pounds on my body. I got up higher than I'd ever been in an off season. I felt terrible. My workouts suffered, my strength suffered, my energy suffered, my inflammation came back. All of the symptoms came back, the heartburn, all of the things. It was just like, why would I do this to myself? And then it was getting with my naturopath, who we got ready to run all the tests. And he was like, look, just give me 8 weeks. Take it all out for 8 weeks. We can talk about allowance and what you want to do again after that. But if you're going to do this right, we're going to do all these tests. I'm going to give you all these supplements. Don't waste it by putting all this other stuff in your body that's now going to impact your results. And I was like, okay, yeah, this isn't cheap. It's not cheap to do the testing. It's not cheap to get these supplements to fix your gut. So why would I jeopardize that? So in August of 2021 was when I finally said, everything has to come out again. And I hadn't gone carnivore yet, but it was just committing to keto, clean, whole food, animal-based keto. So probably more like ketovore at the time. And literally it took only a few weeks for everything to just calm down in my body. Blood work got better every time we did it. Hormones got better every time we did it. The weight just fell off. The first 10 pounds just fell off in that 8 weeks. And then after that was when it was like, okay, I feel like myself again, because the depression had set in so deeply. Y'all, I truly believe that there is a direct link between the processed, packaged, heavily palatable foods and depression. I could not think straight. My brain was hijacked, which is what I like to say all the time about what those foods do to us. But when we're looking at particularly things like disordered eating and depression and anxiety and brain disorders, we have to look at what we're eating. as soon as 48 hours of taking the garbage out, it was like the clouds lifted and I could think clearly again. And I was able to see from an objective perspective instead of this internal, highly emotional, irrational thought patterns.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm 2 weeks off of Zoloft after eating this way for 4 months because even though I was on the medications, they were never perfect. So while I was on them, I could tell a difference in my mood and how I was feeling and the rage that I would have. And it definitely got a lot better. So yeah, I mean, people don't want to accept that. They don't want to believe it. They think it's all, and this is me too, they think it's like, well, that's just how like I'm made, that's how my brain works. But what we're eating greatly affects how our brain works. And I'm not knocking medication because I needed it when I needed it. It was highly important for everybody involved in my family. But yeah, I feel like people just don't get how it's all connected, and that the whole like the dietitian thing and the intuitive eating and everything's on the table, like that just really chaps my ass because I gained 40 pounds in 4 weeks trying to do that. And why should everything be on the table? Like, then I like to joke, okay, well, everything in moderation. So I'm just going to do heroin on the weekends, not during the week, but just the weekends. Like, why is that? Why is allowing all these garbage and sugar and carb ingredients, like, why is that okay? So that just really bothers me.
Oh my gosh, yes.
One thing Courtney said in one of her like responses to someone's comment was they had asked like, why did you stop eating so healthy? You were eating so healthy a couple months ago and now like you're just eating meat. And she was like, what your definition of healthy is not mine. And I felt like crap. And how do you look at someone and say, you might feel like crap eating like this, but you switched your diet, you feel amazing now, but now you're disordered and you have disordered eating. And it's just, that's so unfair. You know, it's so unfair to look at someone objectively and say, you're thriving, you're doing great. Not good enough according to our standards. You're disordered and you need to change the way. It's almost like when I hear that, all I hear is you need to change the way that you're eating because it makes me feel insecure. And I think that that's a really hard reality for some people to accept, that maybe there is so much more responsibility on food than we've given it because we've been taught that food is for pleasure and not
yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And so I loved when she said that. She's like, I felt like crap. Like, why are you arguing with me when I'm telling you I'm thriving when, you know, 5 months ago, I literally felt like garbage. So I think that that's something all of us in this space like really struggle with. And I'm sure like you as a competitor, because that industry is full of junk. I mean, I hate to even say it, but I just see what these people are eating. Like I have a couple of big guys at my gym and they're literally snacking on gummy bears while they're
Pre-workout candy is a thing.
Yeah.
And you know, y'all, fitness, the image of fitness, aesthetic fitness, meaning, you know, what a person's body looks like, is not the picture of health. It has been deemed to be that. We think, oh, a person has a six-pack, that means they're healthy. No, they could be completely broken inside. And they may not even see it right now. It may not be until 20, 40 years from now that their health is completely broken down. But they can get away with it because of the way their body looks. And people think that they're so healthy because they're fit.
Yeah, I mean, what was that? The Biggest Loser coach, Rob, he ended up having like a heart attack and he was like this fitness model. And it's just, you know, most of us won't get heart attacks, hopefully. But just because he's a fitness model did not mean that he was, you know, not going to be exposed to the reality of health. I don't mean to down anyone, but that's an example, fitness model having a heart attack. So what has been the response have you gotten any pushback from other competitors, other coaches? Because I know that there are keto. What is his name? Rob, the
Rob
keto.
Sykes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
He's a coach, and I mean, he has the keto brick, right?
Yeah,
So,
Keto
um,
Savage.
he Keto Savage, yes, and he coached Dr. Jamie in her competition, and she's very much keto, low carb. So, what has been the response from other competitors in this industry that is very pro supplements, pro carb, pro sugar?
Yeah, there's just a few of us, a handful of us. Yeah, Rob, Jamie, there's another Rob Goodwin, who's another
Mhm.
keto coach in the space. He does more of a carb cycling approach though, which I would say is probably more mainstream
Yeah.
and more acceptable in the mainstream.
Mhm.
But still the grand majority of the industry is high carb, low fat, super high protein, and not necessarily quality. When IIFYM, if it fits your macros, hit the scene, it became all about what can you fit into your macros.
Mhm.
Now, I will say, when you're getting really close to stage, I would still argue most competitors go the clean route, because it's not going to be very easy to fit in all that junk when you're getting really close, because your calories are just going to get low. Everybody exists, unfortunately, on very low calories and high cardio by the end. Another reason why I embraced keto in competing is that you don't have to do as much cardio on a ketogenic approach. You know, high carb athletes are doing hours of cardio a day by the time they get to stage, which is completely unsustainable and exhausting. And then they're cutting their carbs out in the last week, so they're literally having no fuel. And this is why most of the industry does push back against keto. They don't understand keto. Most of them are not knowledgeable about it. They haven't researched it or studied it or really looked into it at all. What they consider keto is really just, I guess it would really be PSMF. It's just super low fuel. It's low carb and low fat because they've been low fat their whole prep. They never go high fat. They never allow their bodies to adapt, to become fat adapted. So of course they're going to come down on keto because they don't understand that you actually have to shift the fuel source. And once you do that, it can be sustainable and it can actually make your performance better. A lot of athletes push back on it and coaches push back on it because your performance does take a dip at first because your body has to adjust to the new fuel source. And most athletes are so focused on the quick result of either aesthetics or performance, they don't want to take the time that it takes to make that shift successfully. And they praise carbs. They still praise carbs. So they do not agree with taking carbs out long term.
Yeah.
So it almost just seems like for all this, they're coming from a place of just wanting the aesthetic benefits and not even caring about health then, no? Or are they just not maybe informed properly?
There's a lot of misinformation. There's still, I mean, if you think about it, it's very much like the medical industry. It's just going to take probably another 20 years before the science catches up. And you have a lot of these PhDs out in the space, in the fitness space. One that I will not mention, but I cannot stand him. And they're
We'll talk later. We'll talk off camera.
they're constantly touting, how the science doesn't back this up, and the science still supports this old paradigm, and they're just all about the old paradigm. And honestly, I think it's just a lot of cognitive dissonance, right? This is how they've done it for so long, and they love their carbs. So why would they ever even look into it? They don't believe in the concept that grains are bad for gut health. They don't believe in the concept of that artificial sweeteners can be disruptive to the gut microbiome. They don't even believe that seed oils are inflammatory.
I was
And
just
they
about to
don't,
say that.
and they don't believe that inflammation is the cause of disease. It is that bad that I've had people argue with me, even in keto groups, mind you, because they're so focused on the macros that
Forget about the ingredients.
yeah, it is fascinating to me that there are still so many, even in the keto space, that were never interested in a whole foods approach.
That was
was
me.
me. Yeah, I did pretty clean keto because when I did keto, I started in 2017, 2018. So this was really before keto was like mainstream. I think like in 2008, the end of 2018, beginning of 2019, that new year where everyone started doing their resolutions, that's when keto was like, holy guacamole, like this keto thing is a big thing. But when I started, there were no keto candy bars. There were no keto,
Right.
like keto
Right.
bakeries. And so I lost about 50 to 60 pounds just doing like, I'm not a big dairy person, but I did dairy, veggies, no fruit, and meat, just like lots of ground beef. And I lost a ton of weight. I was healing my body. And then all the keto treats started coming in and all the keto cookbooks with the keto, the keto sweets and the erythritol. And I started digressing, and then I got pregnant. My thyroid issue came back. And then I started, getting other medical issues. And I had my baby and I was doing dirty keto. And I was like, I am not thriving on this. So I get how dirty keto is I call it dirty keto. It's very appealing because it's almost like permission to eat pretty much anything and be in ketosis.
Right, which we know when we've been doing this for a while, that ketosis is not the magic that creates anything. Right? If you're still not managing your fuel, if you're still eating things that are causing your body to be sick and inflamed, you're still not going to get the benefits.
Mm-hmm.
And it can work for a little while, right? Especially when you're first switching over from a standard American diet. It can work. You can fit all that crap in. Your fats can be sky high through the roof, and you're still going to drop weight. You're still going to get rid of the water weight and all the inflammation, and you're still going to do great. And then you're going to hit a point, right? Everybody hits that point of plateau or stall, or the benefits stop coming. And now it's like, now what?
I mean, it's like veganism. When people start being vegan from a standard American diet, they'll feel amazing for months and months and months, maybe even years. And then they hit the wall with hair loss or,
Oh yeah, the
digestion issues. But of course, like someone coming off what we've been fed our entire lives, going to keto, paleo, veganism, you're going to feel amazing because you've just been sick your entire life.
Yep. And you're trading, and this is an issue with binge eaters and bulimia as well. You're trading the nutrient dense foods, whole foods, for the empty calories of the packaged processed thing that's not giving you any nutrition. It's giving you all these calories. It's not satisfying you for very long. Now you're skipping meals because you've eaten the junk instead. So now you're actually malnourished, although you're over fueled. So you have too much energy coming in that your body's now going to store it as body fat, but you're not nourished and you're still looking for more.
Yeah, I get that because I dabbled in paleo, like 2010 is when I got Primal Blueprint from Mark Sisson. So I dabbled in that, and that's a focus on ingredient, like there weren't the paleo treats then. And then I started dabbling here and there in keto, probably like 2013, 14, I don't know, somewhere around that. And from then on, it was always a weight loss thing for me. I would go back to keto to lose weight, and it was whatever fit in my macros. Those low carb tortillas, like I would still yeah, like if it was right next to me, I'm like, ooh, like I would eat like 4 or 5 of those. The texture, like they're just so amazing. But it's like, Lord knows what is in that, what's the garbage in there making them even low carb. I just didn't care. They were so good. So for me, it was always weight loss, and it didn't matter about my health. I was just trying to lose weight. Now that I eat this way, like the whole focus is health and ingredients, or lack thereof, because there's not really ingredients in my life anymore, but it's not coming from a weight loss spot. I just know that the weight loss will happen. And yeah, it's just focusing on feeling good for once in my life. I feel like years and years of yo-yo dieting, like I finally found, like I finally landed where I'm supposed to be, and I don't see myself like ever going back to all the stuff I ate before.
This is where I think that carnivore is the game changer.
Mhm.
And it is because, especially when, well, really for all of us, right? There's not anyone that has ever struggled with weight that didn't have both a mental issue with food, a mental emotional issue with food, as well as the physical, right? Carnivore takes all of the questioning out of it. It's so clear. And I think that's the beauty of it, beyond the fact that, okay, you're eating the most nutrient dense foods you can possibly put in your body, and nothing that's detracting from the nutrients that your body can absorb from the foods. So that alone is going to improve the brain, your body, every function in your body, and make you actually function optimally and be able to think clearly. But it removes all of this confusion of what to eat. It's so clear. Is it meat? Is it eggs? Does it come from an animal? No. Okay, then.
There's no
Very
balance
simple.
Right. There's no like Tetris with your macros, like what can I fit in today? How can I get away with something? And it kind of holds you like more accountable, because you're like, you start to realize how you were trying to get away with stuff before.
Mhm.
It's like, oh yeah, I would have been trying to get this in and trying to get that in. And how do I play games with this where it's like everything is just so clear with it.
Now,
Yeah.
one thing like Courtney and I hear all the time, Courtney gets it's thunderstorming where I live. So if
I heard that.
I can't do anything
We're
about
just
that
getting ready
background.
to start over here.
Can you turn the cloud down, please?
Yeah, I wish it worked that way. One thing, especially Courtney, because she has a pretty big platform on TikTok, she gets a lot of, duets or comments on this is disordered eating. You're giving yourself an eating disorder, and it sounds like you were diagnosed with an actual eating disorder. A lot of people will, and I'm not saying it's invalid, but it's more self-diagnosed, which you can totally admit and diagnose yourself with an eating disorder.
Absolutely.
But it sounds like you actually had to seek treatment for an eating disorder and therapy. So Courtney gets a lot, you have an eating disorder. This is disordered eating. Since you were someone who was actually diagnosed and treated for an eating disorder, can you speak about that in itself, like being diagnosed with a real eating disorder, and how something like keto or carnivore is not an eating disorder? This is like a loaded one, like, because I just feel like not many people are actually clinically diagnosed anymore with a one. And a lot of people on social be like, keto gave me an eating disorder. And I hate that, because keto was the beginning of my freedom to food, and I've never had an eating disorder. So but I still had some addictions to food, disordered eating, but not a diagnosed eating disorder. So can you speak to that? Because I feel like,
I mean, before she chimes in, I just want to like add really quick, because it's like, okay, if they really think that now, and this wouldn't be like a normal eating disorder, if they really thought that, would they ever see someone that looks like they're anorexic? Would they ever say that to them? Like, would you ever go up to somebody that you would maybe think that and be like, oh my gosh, you have an eating disorder? So like, why would they feel like it's okay to say that to me? Like, how fucking inappropriate. Like,
Right.
it's just bizarre to me. So
the worst thing is accusing someone who might be suffering from that and being in your situation, Courtney, public, like shaming you in front of millions of people on social media. So this is the one that really we go back and forth, Courtney, about this all the time, because I just think that calling out people and telling them they have an eating disorder or they're promoting eating disorders is really cruel.
Yeah. Well, they say I traded one eating disorder for another, and it's like, that's fucked up. So I'm excited to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, I think that concept of what someone says to someone else, first of all, if you were concerned that someone had an eating disorder, that would be the worst way to go about it. That is not what would be recommended. And I would encourage anybody, if there's anyone in your life who you're concerned about, genuinely concerned about, There are so many resources out there where you can go to find how can you support someone with an eating disorder. You can go to NADA, the National Eating Disorder Association, I think it is, NEDA.com. They have a hotline where you can call if you are suffering yourself. They have resources.
I'm going to say Courtney, we will put this down in the comments and information when this is posted, because this is super important to have information and access to this. So yes, this is amazing. We're going to put all this stuff in the the description. So yes, continue. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so first and foremost, there are places you can go to find out how you can actually support someone in this situation. In this case, I would say that they're clearly not genuinely concerned. They're using it as ammo against what you're trying to put out there, right? So they're doing what we have seen. Okay, for anyone who's ever had a divorce or gotten out of a relationship, you know that something that happened at the end of that relationship was you stopped arguing fair, let's say, and your arguments became nothing but daggers where you were trying to hurt the other person with the words you were saying. And you were throwing everything you can at them out of a place of where you were hurt or angry, and just throwing things that you knew were going to hurt. That is what these people are doing with their words. They are not doing that out of concern. That is, I am throwing everything I can at you because you've triggered something in me. Right? So that's, first of all, that is showing something with them that they need to look at, and not about you. Okay, I digress.
That is going to be a clip right there, because I'm like, oh, that is so, sorry guys. That is so loud, but that is it right there. That is exactly what it is. That like spoke to my soul. Okay, keep going.
It's the whole hurt people, and they're projecting and all that.
Exactly.
The misery loves company, that whole thing.
Yeah, so if you feel the need to degrade someone or put down what they're doing with their lifestyle, you might want to check yourself and tune in and figure out why you're so triggered by this, because it's triggering something in you that you need to look at. Okay, now on the eating disorder side of things, yes, a lot of people are not diagnosed, and that is for a couple of reasons. One, eating disorders prompt a lot of shame. And this is a main trait of disordered eating, particularly binge eating and bulimia, but all eating disorders in general. And there's many more than the main ones that you hear about. So to get a diagnosis, you have to be willing to seek help. Mm-hmm. And I would say that the majority of people suffering are probably not seeking help, because it keeps you stuck in shame and in the spiral. And those who are in the depths of it are likely not seeking help. It took me a long time to seek help. Then by the time you do seek help, if you go to, there is the DSM, it's the psychotherapy or psychology, it's the psychological review of all psychological disorders are in this textbook, basically, the DSM. So there have been many iterations. They list all of the diagnoses, right? This is for medical professionals, licensed therapists and professionals to diagnose. So you can actually look it up, and you can look up eating disorders in the DSM and what the definition and what the criteria are for each. But typically the frequency of the actions, so particularly in bulimia, you have to be binging and purging consistently, frequently enough to be diagnosed. And this is like multiple times a week, I believe. I think it's like, I know it's at least more than once a week. So for a lot of people out there, they're just simply not doing it enough for it to be diagnosed. Does that mean it's not a problem? Absolutely not, right? It's kind of like diabetes, right? What is the medical doctor going to do when you go to them and you have prediabetes or you're pre-diabetes? They don't give you lifestyle interventions. They just tell you we're going to watch it. We're just going to keep watching it until you get diabetes, and then we're going to give you medication.
The first thing I think about is like, that's like telling like someone who's dabbling in heroin, like, oh, you're just doing a little bit, just a tiny bit. We're not going to diagnose you as an addict. but keep doing it more, and we'll give you that pass.
Yeah,
you know?
you're not ready for rehab quite yet. Let's give it another month. We'll sit back and watch.
So horrible.
Yeah, let's just wait till it gets worse, right? Now, that doesn't mean there's nothing they can do for you, right? So anybody who's dealing with even disordered thinking, because really disordered eating comes from disordered thinking. One of the best things I ever learned from one of my therapists was very simple things that all of us have said before. I'm an all or nothing person. I'm all black and white. I'm very extremist, right? This is a very common trait. It's black and white. I'm on the diet, I'm off the diet. When I'm on, I'm great. When I'm off the rails, right? This is an actual disordered thinking pattern. These are the kinds of things that we can identify before it ever even gets that far. So in my opinion, we really need to be looking at ourselves. And the reason why I loved the title of this, and I love, Courtney, your mantra or your motto, question everything.
Oh, it's hard to see. It's all glary.
Yeah,
It's on my shirt.
I did a talk at the low carb cruise this year, and I'll be back next year. I cannot wait. It's going to be amazing. I'll tell you some details about it in a bit. But my talk, I shared some of the depths. I didn't even know I was going to share some of the depths of where I got to in my disorder. But essentially what I was encouraging in that talk was you have to question every thought you think. Because it is not, as we say, fitness and health is 80% diet, 20% training. No, it is 100% mental and emotional. If we don't get a hold of what's going on between our ears, we are not going to make it. It is everything, make or break is mental. Everything is up here. So we have to question these thoughts and question these, just like the unhealthy habits before we got into this lifestyle, these have become lifelong habits. And if you think they're just going to go away tomorrow because you cut out sugar for a week, okay, the physiological cravings are likely going to be gone. When I give people a challenge, I give them a 4-day challenge to take anything that tastes even a little bit sweet, whether it's a whole food or not, completely out of their mouth, like nothing that tastes sweet at all, for 4 days. You will be amazed at the physiological craving difference. You're not going to feel hungry. You're not going to crave like you did. But the habit patterns are still there and the mental thought processes are still there. So if you don't tackle that side of it, even though the physiological craving is gone, you're still going to have this like emotional craving because you've just trained yourself over time to do this thing again and again and again. So I say all that to say you don't need to be diagnosed to recognize that there's a problem and to start taking action on that. And I encourage everybody to seek therapy. It may take some time to find the right therapist for you. You have to find a good fit. I know for a lot of us who are on this very countercultural lifestyle, for me, one of the things that scared me away from seeking treatment for so long was I just know they're going to try to get me to eat carbs. And I was petrified. I didn't want to go seek help when they're just going to tell me I have to eat everything. And that, yes, I was afraid that they were going to tell me, keto is an eating disorder. So kind of getting back to that, here's the thing. No diet is an eating disorder. Disordered eating comes from disordered thinking. It's really, truly not about the food. The only thing that connects it with the food is if you are undernourished, meaning you're depriving your body of nutrients, and this can look in many different ways. If you're under eating, you're under consuming calories, you're under consuming fat, you're under consuming whole foods. You may be gorging yourself on junk, but if you're under consuming whole foods and you're not getting the nutrition your body needs, you're malnourished, you're undernourished, and there will be a physiological desire for food. So you're going to battle binge urges because your body is craving nutrients. So that is the piece that connects it with food. That's the only piece to me that when it comes to eating disorders is about the food. If you are truly malnourished, there is a physiological need that your body has, and it's going to scream at you to put more food in your body. So that's the piece that's connected to food. The rest of it really has nothing to do with food. There's usually an emotional need that you're ignoring. There is feelings you don't want to feel and you're trying to numb out or avoid your feelings with food. I like to say there's no such thing as emotional eating. We say that we're emotional eaters. We are not emotional eaters. We are avoiding our emotions by turning to food. Just like drug addicts avoid their emotions by turning to drugs. We can avoid our emotions by turning to TV or TikTok or sex or, you know, any vice, alcohol, right? Any vice is an avoidance or an escape from reality. And so there is something you need to feel that's likely uncomfortable. So the best thing you can do for yourself is learn to be with yourself and with whatever uncomfortable emotions come up. And I had to go through all of that with food to get to the point where I could just be with myself. And I recognized a whole lot of things that needed to heal internally. And that's what led to recovery. One more piece I want to say about the eating disorders. There is someone y'all should definitely have on here. And another great resource we can put in the show notes. Michelle Hearn, dietitian.
She's great.
She wrote a book called The Dietitian's Dilemma. She is a runner and a recovered anorexic. And she speaks in depth about the problems with the dietitian industry and the recovery industry and the treatment centers and how they're handling it, because they are still very much pushing standard American diet and they're force feeding those in treatment centers. You know, unfortunately, I really can't even recommend. There's no treatment center that I know of that is operating differently. And one of the things that I really want to get into, you know, I've had on my heart for a while, and I got to meet Michelle at KetoCon, and we got to sit down and really talk. I've got to have her on my YouTube too. I want to get her message out and the things that she's doing out, because she's the one that I've seen so far, the one person in this space that's really speaking out about it. But we need more voices in the space speaking out about the dangers of the current treatment options for people with eating disorders, because it's not doing a service to people, it's keeping them stuck. In her talk at KetoCon, she spoke about how anorexia has the highest relapse rate of any addiction, and the death rate is pretty high. And a lot of the time it's suicide, because there's just no hope. And so it's, you know, it's something that we have to see change, right? Along with so many other of these mainstream industries. But it's tough, because I always want to give people resources to help, but at the same time, a lot of the mainstream resources are not open to this way of life. When we have seen that these interventions of an animal-based diet, whole foods diet, anywhere on the spectrum of, you know, you don't have to be full on strict carnivore, but animal-based whole foods nutrition, it's the way to really, it's what got me out of it, right? When I committed to that, I was giving my body what it needed and it wanted desperately, then I could deal with all the psychological aspects of it. But I couldn't deal with that while I was still attached to all of this garbage and poison that was literally in my body, poisoning my body and my brain.
Yeah, I agree. So just a couple of things. I just want to say, I think her handle is like run, eat meat, repeat, or something along the lines of that.
Yes.
She actually just called out another, I don't know if this other lady is a dietitian and a runner. I think she is. And she was talking about how she's like fueling and using like Pop-Tarts and stuff on her long runs. And so Michelle's like, what the hell? Like, this is not okay. So that's a good one. I've actually chatted with her a little bit in the DMs on some of her posts. She's really awesome. She has good stuff. And another thing, just to touch on like your mental health in general, what you're saying about like doing the inner work, like I feel like it's all connected. I am very, I would say like spiritual and kind of like into the woo. So when I was having my like intuitive eating spout and issues, like I was very vocal on my social media about it. And I had someone that I knew like reach out, and she's like, hey, like, I've known her in the space for a while. She does like a lot of like human design stuff. I'm not sure if you're familiar with
Oh
human
yeah,
design.
I'm
Okay.
into the woo also.
Okay. Yeah. So she's like, and I've known her for like a year on social media, and she's like, hey, you know what? Maybe I can help you with the inner stuff with your food issues. And I'm like, and the way she explained it, and not like in a salesy way at all. It was just like, I think I could like help you. And so I hired her for like 6 sessions, and we did, God, I keep getting the chills. We did like inner child work, inner child meditations, shadow work, like really dove deep and did a lot of like healing like that. And it was probably like after working with her like a month later that I like found carnivore diet. And I just wonder, like, without doing that inner work, if I ever would have been open to even hearing about the carnivore diet or even giving it a shot. So I think it's all linked in. I should probably actually do a live with her and talk about the whole mental health stuff. And she's not a therapist, but I call her my spiritual therapist, and I still
Yeah.
work with her to this day. I feel like my money's better spent on her than my normal therapist that I used to go
Oh
see.
my gosh,
So
absolutely.
yeah.
I did the deep trauma healing. It's kind of crazy. I was looking at my memories on Google Photos, popped up today, and it was 2 years ago this weekend where I flew out to Utah for a retreat. It was a business for coaches. And it was a guy that used to be in the paleo space, Mike Bledsoe. He had a podcast, huge podcast back in the day called Barbell Shrugged. It was out there with his group, Strong Coaches, and a lot of them are into the woo woo. And I went out there thinking I was going out there for my business. And it was like, it opened me up to what was really going on. And I was like, wow, okay, I need to tell people. I need to get a handle on this. That was like the thing that really flipped the switch for me. And through them, almost everyone on that retreat had been through another retreat and a 90-day program called Training Camp for the Soul. And I went through that from November to February, and that's really what started my whole healing journey. And it was the same thing. It was all of that, digging deep, inner child, trauma healing. We did trauma response therapies, bodily sensation therapy. I mean, I did my first cacao ceremony out there. It was just the coolest experience, but it opened up so much I was not facing. And same thing, I don't know that I would have landed where I did had I not done that work.
Yeah, that inner work is so important, and it's so awesome. And it's all linked, the whole mind, body, soul. You can't just focus on the fuel you're putting in your body. You got to take care of your mind and your soul and everything. So yeah, that's exciting. I'll link my person down below too if anyone wants to check her out, but don't make her hard to book. Please don't all steal her from me.
You need to keep her.
Yeah.
Okay.
You want to start wrapping things up then?
Yeah, well, this is like every time we do one of these talks, I like go in and I'm like excited, but I never expect to get as much out of it as I do. Like I feel almost like I'm being selfish because I'm getting so much out of it too. I just feel like the eating disorder thing is something that we could even do a talk just on that, like alone. And I just think it is so important, especially because the trend nowadays on TikTok is duetting. These nutritionists get clients by duetting and essentially food shaming someone, and it makes them money. And so I think it's really, really important to address it. And I just think that was like you were talking about the eating and the food freedom type and then the manipulation of the mind type thing. And I was getting goosebumps, and I'm in a long sleeve shirt. You know what I mean? That was so amazing. Can you just tell everyone where we can find you, what platforms you're on? I know you have some exciting trips coming up and you do that stuff. So can you tell us a little bit where we can find you afterwards?
Okay, so I am most active on Instagram at the Keto Bikini Pro. And I have a Facebook group that is free and open to any ladies in this space. Currently, it is called Keto Bikini Secrets for Badass Boss Babes. But I'm working on a rebranding of it. I want to make it more inclusive because a lot of the time people see Keto Bikini and they just think it's all about competing, and it's really not. None of my clients right now are competitors. All of my clients are anywhere from they have 50 plus pounds to lose to they're trying to gain. So anything in between. Also, my boyfriend and I just started, my boyfriend's also a carnivore. He's kind of the one that really ushered me into this life.
Kind of feel like we need to snag him up, like to do an interview with, because I found you through him, and I like asked you, and I was like, probably should do like Coach Bronson too. Like,
Yes. Oh my gosh. Ultimate Ketogenic Fitness, Coach Bronson.
does he respond to DMs? Does he
Yes.
get to them?
Yes.
Okay.
DM him. We got to get him on for sure.
Okay.
We just started a podcast. And as of today, it just got approved by Apple. So we are now on Apple. It is called Less Glove, More Fist. And it is the Keto Fit Life couple. We are basically like, it's uncensored, it's unfiltered. And we do a lot of just ranting around here with each other. And we were like, you know what, let's make this public for everyone. So we're talking about the topics that fire us up and get us all passionate in this space, things that we see. So that's new. And then my YouTube is Keto Bikini Secrets also. And yeah, the Bronson and I actually have a retreat coming up for couples. We have 3 spots left, and it's a small group in a house in an Airbnb on the beach in Destin, Florida, November 10th through the 13th. So you can check that out at ketofitlifecouple.com. And we have a meetup here on the Mid-Atlantic Maryland coast at the Eastern Shore Food Lab with Modern Stone Age Kitchen. Dr. Bill Schindler, Dr. Sally Norton will be there talking about oxalates. We are going to butcher a pig. We are going to have a authentic handmade taco dinner, and all the proceeds benefit Eastern Shore Food Lab. So that is going to be a really cool experience.
I am very close to Maryland. So
When is it?
It is November 5th. It's a one-day Saturday event.
Too soon for me to figure out how to get out there.
Yeah, I'll have to look that up. So because
That's on Eventbrite.
Okay, because I'm like not more than like a 10-minute drive to Maryland. So it just
really?
Oh,
nice.
It's in DC, so it's like
Oh my God.
Oh, I don't know the map, girl.
Yeah, it's like
That's awesome.
You can be in 3 states like in 20 minutes. So
I was in DC earlier this week. That is amazing.
Really?
I would love to meet you in person. Oh my gosh,
let's do something, because that is like, there are no carnivore people here. Almost all of them are like in California.
Yes, I know. There's a handful. I'm meeting people. I'm starting to meet more. We just also put together a regular, like, on meetup.com. We have a meetup group now.
Yeah.
I don't remember if we called it Mid-Atlantic. The event is called the Mid-Atlantic Meetup. I think we might have called it Mid-Atlantic Adventures or Carnivore Adventures or something like that. But we were like, we like to do hiking and stuff. And so we were like, we should just do a meetup, put it out there. And then when we decide to go do something, like tell people about it and invite other people to join us. So
yeah, absolutely. That's so crazy. That's awesome. We'll have to, now I'm like, the wheels are turning. Like, where can we go eat? Where can we go hike? The food is the most important, right?
Yes, well, we definitely need to hang out.
We will put all that information in the description for sure on YouTube. And yeah, thank you so much. We can end the recording and chat a little bit more, but anything else, Devin, before we stop?
I think we're good to end the chat.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank
you,
you.
everybody.